I've got, I just did a quick Google search. Texas Senate committee heard legislation on Monday aiming to prohibit social media platforms from censoring users based on their viewpoints. Senate Bill SB 12, filed by Senator Brian Hughes of Mineola. Let's pop this open and see what we got here. Introduced Senate committee report engrossed. I don't know what any of that means. I'll have to look into this. But I got to be honest. Like we got a big operation going on here. Here's the thing, though. If Texas offers up these protections, we have no choice but to move there. You know why? My business could be shut down overnight.
Yeah.
These platforms could just nuke us overnight. Everybody loses their jobs. Go to Texas, we have recourse. Yeah. I would have no choice if this bill passes to do that.
Well, I guess I'll need to move too. I guess we'll all need to move.
Yeah. I think most people would go to Texas. I mean, there is interesting things about DC with, political viewpoint, political party or affiliation is a protected class. But that doesn't do anything about big tech.
No, I don't think so. I mean, and this is what, the funny thing is, I remember 2 years ago, I've been advocating for exactly this type of law. I was hoping we'd get it done at the federal level. But, man, if we can get it at the state level and we get some friendly judges who look at it the same way Thomas does, right? Federal preemption of a state-created speech right. That would be,
That's fascinating.
I mean, and because that would basically, honestly, it would have to, I think, Twitter and Facebook and YouTube would probably at that point stop censoring everybody because they wouldn't want to risk somebody being in Texas and having a cause of action.
But wouldn't, so let's say you're in Texas. They pass this bill. They pass this, it becomes law. The governor signs it. You get censored. And so you immediately go into a court, file the paperwork or whatever. What would you say? You'd file an injunction?
So you file you file a complaint, right? That's any lawsuit begins with a complaint, and then you also file a motion for a preliminary injunction,
which gives you your accounts back.
Right. Like if you win that motion, you get your account back.
That could be really quickly, couldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, injunctions can get heard very fast. Like sometimes there's like temporary restraining orders that are super fast. But then a preliminary injunction can happen. You can get a decision on that within weeks if you want.
So let me ask. Let's say I'm in Texas and we're doing the show. And then one day, boom, YouTube's gone. So I file a complaint and I request an emergency injunction because my business is now at risk and all of my employees could be out of work unless this is reversed. You think it's likely a judge would say, reverse this until we can hear the case?
Probably. They would probably issue, you'd probably win your injunction given the nature of the law. And then right, once you win your injunction, they have to let you keep your account until, I would assume, until it's adjudicated.
Now, then they say, but Section 230 grants us this immunity, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say that so who would hear that case? Would it go to a federal court then?
So, they could, so it depends. If they could probably remove it to federal court, right? Like there's enough money at issue that would be what's called diversity jurisdiction. So two bases of federal court jurisdiction. This is one L's learned their first day of civil procedure. Okay. Two bases of federal court jurisdiction. And there has to be a federal question, meaning you're suing under a federal law, or there's diversity jurisdiction, which means the parties are from different states and there's at least $75,000 at issue. So this would be a state law. So it probably wouldn't be a federal question, although they might make a First Amendment claim. I'd have to reread my work to think about how that would work, but it's certainly diversity. So they could remove it into federal court in Texas.
So let's say in the federal court, the judge hears it and says, I understand Section 230, but we have a free speech issue where the First Amendment is supposed to protect the rights of the individual. And if Texas is protecting the speech rights, the First Amendment can't supersede that. So I rule in favor of the complainant, right?
Right.
They sue. It goes to the Supreme Court, I'd imagine. If it goes, it could potentially.
Well, I'd actually have to think about whether or not they'd have the right to appeal at that point if you have an injunction. If you have an injunction granted, I think you probably would have the right to appeal that right away.
So let's say YouTube then appeals.
You'd appeal that to the Federal Appeals Court, so that would be the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Then they would, have a fairly quick hearing on the injunction, and then if they lose there, they can appeal to.
So let's say they agree with you, and then YouTube appeals again. Then it goes to Supreme Court?
Yeah, Supreme Court. They would be applying for a stay of the injunction.
Now, here's my final question. If the Supreme Court agrees with me in that case, would it impact the rest of the country?
Depends on how they wrote the opinion, right? So if they write it an unpublished or non-precedential, it wouldn't. But they could just as easily write a precedential opinion on the injunction if they wanted to. And then that would be binding law.
Why would they do one or the other?
Sometimes they don't like putting out precedential opinions if it's like a very new issue. They kind of want to let lower courts handle it and like get more reasoned opinions. Also, in a rush, they don't like putting out because part of the thing is whenever they make a rule, it affects everyone, everything, a variety of different body of laws. So oftentimes, like when they're forced to issue a ruling or an opinion on kind of short notice because it's an injunction, they are reluctant to make it like precedential. So there are reasons, they want. So whenever something's precedential, they want to be careful and give it full review. So there's some reason, in a very, very emergency circumstance, they might issue like a non-precedential opinion.
It seems tough though. It seems like the likelihood throughout the Texas judge probably going to side with you because the Texas law says you can't do this. But then they're going to kick it to a federal court, and then you have what the first federal judge, the appellate, and then the Supreme Court. Yeah,
and I mean, probably wouldn't even I'm not sure the state judge might grant you that immediate temporary restraining order before the case is removed to federal court.
Could the federal judge say I don't want to hear it? State law stands.
Federal judge could. I mean, the federal judge could maybe say there's not even a federal court. I mean, it's possible there's not jurisdiction. Probably not. The federal judge would have to rule on the injunction. They could say for what they could disagree, right? They could say First Amendment doesn't apply. We're denying your injunction. Then you could appeal, or vice versa. They could go either way.
Interesting. So basically, Texas is granting you the right to this platform to speak, and the federal government would have to deny you that right.
Right, exactly, which is sort of, and there's precedent in different contexts where, not in the tech context, but it's like in the union stuff. There was some Supreme Court case where the Supreme Court said something like, if a federal law preempts a state right that grants the right to speak, that's a First Amendment issue. And there's a First Amendment prohibition against that.
I wonder if you were suing YouTube, for instance, in Texas, but if YouTube's like a Delaware corporation, then would that, and you were in Texas, would that didn't automatically be across state lines and immediately become a federal issue?
Depends. So this is another classic 1L civil procedure issue, which is a corporation is located in its principal place of business and its place of incorporation for diversity purposes. So Google's primary place of business is California, Delaware corporation. So if you are a resident of either Delaware or California, diversity jurisdiction wouldn't be available. But if you were a resident of Texas, it would.
Man, I think there's an easier solution to this. I think, Ian, you were saying in 3 months we can have this thing up and running.
That was one person mentioned that if we had 10 dedicated full-time developers, that it could be ready in 3 months. So that's like optimal pie in the sky, I think, 3 months. But yeah, something, I mean, within the year for sure, I would imagine.
But what if we got like 100... open source community, active communication in a Discord server?
It would be good, and we're getting close to that. But there are diminishing returns when people code over each other and
forking.
Yeah, too many cooks in the kitchen. So you want a crack team of like experts and specialists.
So what I want to do is I want to make it. There's one big thing that makes YouTube dominant, and that's you make money on YouTube. There's a reason why people don't use these other platforms. People get banned from YouTube, and they'll say, okay, fine, I'll go to Minds.com. But you make money on YouTube. Now, Minds was smart about this, and they implemented a way to make money on Minds as well. And the token's actually worth like $3 now. So I have all my videos automatically post on Minds and everything. But for most people, they need to make money. So we want to make a way that you can have an open source piece of software free for everyone that makes it very easy to install a website. You buy server space, boom, you install it. It's a functioning website where you can easily post things. WordPress already makes it particularly easy. So we're also going to provide instructions for people because there's some, learning curve, but it includes subscription functionality so that somebody you can easily plug in if you're using PayPal, Stripe, or some other, e-commerce platform. Then you have a members only. So you can
Isn't Ghost doing something like this? Because this sounds similar to Substack, but Ghost, I think.
Except this is going to be you on your server with your domain. However you do it, you own it, and no one can ban you but yourself.
That's Ghost. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ghost.
I'm going to look them up, though.
Yeah.
It exists?
Yeah, I think it might exist already.
Ooh. So you drop it onto your server and boom, and then you got it.
Right. Good. Like, I don't know if you know Balaji Srinivasan. He wrote about this, right? He was like writing about like how, after Twitter censorship, how do you do this? And he was like, Substack is still centralized, right? Substack's its own platform.
They could ban you.
But Ghost is like something you implement on your own website.
Do you know what the website is?
I think, let me see.
Because if I Google search Ghost, I'm not going to find it.
Yeah,
right.
Found that out the hard way.
Ghost, Substack.
It's not that hard. Well, but listen, there's one other thing. Maybe they've added this.
Yeah. Ghost.org if you want to find it.
We want to add a networking functionality because the next big thing about YouTube is that it markets you for you. Instead of buying marketing like a traditional show, if YouTube likes you and thinks they'll make money off you, they'll start promoting your work. So what we want to add to these websites is a networking section that's part of the package. Now you'll have on your site the ability to remove certain people so they won't appear on your site, certain words, phrases, or things. It's your choice, but it's your website. Mm-hmm. So then if someone goes to timcast.com, then this software allows people to comment, be users. It's connected to the Fediverse. So the networking section functions like chat rooms or Twitter, but then they can also see recommended shows that are very similar based on keywords. So it'll be like Human Events and, Carl Benjamin, Lotus Eaters podcast. And then they'll be like, oh, cool. And they can get that recommendation feed like they would on any other platform. But it's a decentralized network of people just running these sites.
I was just thinking a cool feature would be if you opted in for your site to be found on other sites, then Tim could put my site on his site. And if someone found me through Tim's site, Tim would get 5% of the revenue. So you would be able to opt into that.
It's not Ghost. Ghost is a free trial service. Sign up. It's like you get 14 days free trial. I'm talking about we would give you, there's like a plugin.
Oh, it's like free. It's just totally free.
Absolutely free for everybody. And you own it 100. It's open source code. It's just free to use. When you open it, boom, all of a sudden your website has like a post section for you. You log in, you just like click a post like you would be on Twitter or whatever. You upload a video, and then you can click a lock button and lock it and say $5 members only. And then people can click become a member. You'll need your own accounts. Maybe PayPal bans you, maybe Stripe bans you, maybe your domain bans you. Well, those are other services you can't get around. But there won't be a Patreon CEO who bans you. There won't be a Jack Conte who bans you. And then in order to, he's CEO of Patreon, in order to then network with other people, it's in the Fediverse. And the Fediverse, for people who don't know, is basically like a Twitter protocol where different servers can communicate with each other. So you could follow someone on Gab, but also see them on a different server, a different website altogether. So then we basically create probably the way it should be. If we do that, we don't need Section 230.
That's true. I mean, I really would like to create a world where we just that these people are irrelevant, right? Like I think that's the end goal. And I mean, I'm all for it. I'm not a tech guy. I don't know tech. I know law, and so I'm just like, okay, how do we change the law to solve the problem? That's my role. I hope you guys can solve it via tech.
Yeah, I think you can't legislate away every problem. That's for sure.
That's true, but I mean, some people, I still have people underestimate how effective law can be solving at particular types of problems. I mean, we've got there's a lot of background for how to solve common carrier type problems and discrimination type problems. I mean, that's the whole thing Clarence Thomas wrote about. He went through, you can make big tech a common carrier, you can make them have public accommodation laws, and then you create private rights of action. Like you don't need a bureaucracy to solve civil rights. Like you literally can just do it through people litigating.
Very briefly, how do you feel about legislating gun rights, like saying limiting people's gun rights when there are 3D printers that can print those weapons in secret?
I mean, I basically think I'm a constitutionalist on that. I think, Heller is right. We shouldn't, guns that are in common use shouldn't be regulated. I think, I guess I wouldn't say I'm an absolutist in the sense that I think all current gun laws are unlawful or something via the Second Amendment, because I think even at the time of the founding, there were some restrictions out there. And I remember there was some stuff you were saying about, like, for example, I think it's okay to prohibit, like, violent felons from owning guns, right? Like, I'm okay with that law.
I disagree with it.
What gets me is when they try and say it's illegal to have this kind of gun, but then it can be 3D printed in someone's basement. Like, you can't...
Yeah.
You can't back that, like you can't enforce that law. So
it's bad to have laws that are unenforceable in general. I don't like unenforceable laws. But I saw you were like you were going through the Dante Wright case and be like, that person shouldn't have been arrested or whatever for the gun charge.
Well, but there was also the aggravated robbery, which is a different story.
Right. Well, I mean, but yeah, like my view is, okay, so the guy gets out, he's arrested for aggravated robbery and indicted, and the trial date's in 2 years. Well, we want to give him bail. Okay, but he's been indicted for aggravated robbery. Like, I think it's a reasonable condition of bail that you not possess a firearm at that point.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
Right. My position is after they get out of prison and we're like, you've paid your debt to society, they get their rights back.
I think that's more defensible, but I'm still okay with laws that say, like, certain violent felonies. If you committed a violent felony, you forfeit that right in the same way that you forfeit a voting right.
I think you should have the right to vote.
Nah.
Like, if you're in prison, maybe not. If you're in prison, you obviously don't get a gun. But if you're out, like, I just don't like the idea of second-class citizens for any reason.
I agree.
You people have to be brought back in, and we have to give people the opportunity. Because the problem with these felony laws, I'll tell you a story. I worked at this. I worked at a smoothie shop once, and this woman who worked there apparently was like telling. So I overheard this. So I could be wrong. It's been like 15 years. A woman applied for a job, and on the application, she said that she was a felon. And her felony, as she explained it, was that she was arrested for sleeping in an airport. She was there, she overstayed her ticket, and she remained in the airport, so they eventually arrested her with a felony for being in an airport without a ticket. Something like that. And then they gloated about how they would not hire her. And they were like, as if we would hire that person. And I'm like, she's trying to work a minimum wage job selling smoothies, dude.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a different issue where I'm like totally okay with certain government programs to like subsidize the hiring of people.
It's not necessarily what I but just what I mean. I'm just saying, if someone knows no matter what I do, I am going to be a second class citizen. Why would they bother reforming themselves or trying to come back into society and doing better? They can't travel. They can't, have a weapon. They can't defend themselves. They can't vote. They're not. No taxation without representation. I don't care if you're out of jail. If the judge says your punishment for doing this will be 10 years, then after the 10 years, then we're like, welcome back. Now don't do it again, and you'll enjoy the fruits of American citizenship.
But if you're a second-class citizen, you're much more likely, in my opinion, to do it again.
I agree.
So then you have more people in jail. Because
you view yourself as an outsider at that point. You're like, I'm not a part of your system. I'll do what I want.
And if you can't get a job, then it's,
I mean, that seems, I would focus on the job part. I just don't think you're entitled to vote at that point. I don't think that, I'm also more of a utilitarian when it comes to voting. I don't like, Then
I'll say this, shall not be infringed.
Yeah, but shall not kill.
Should 13-year-olds be allowed to buy guns?
No.
Shall not be infringed. In 1789, were there 15-year-olds who owned their own property and were running businesses?
There are still those possession laws, right? For example, Rittenhouse. I'm pretty sure. I know they're trying to prosecute him for unlawful possession of that firearm, but my reading of the law says it was lawful.
Yeah. I've heard some other experts talk about this. Now, let me clarify too. I'm actually just giving a very harsh interpretation of 2A. I don't think 13-year-olds should be allowed to buy guns or have guns. I think there should be. It is difficult though, and the reason I say this is back then, way back when. The age limits were much lower for a lot of things. We've moved them up repeatedly. 18. So we set it at 16, then it's 18. Now it's 21. They're trying to make it 21 in some places. Eventually it'll be 30. Eventually it'll be 35. So
I non-ironically think we should raise the voting age to 30.
Is there a constitutional amendment that says the right to voting shall not be infringed for any persons in the United States?
I don't think so. There was a late constitutional amendment that reduced the voting age to 18 for everybody.
There are, I think, three amendments. It's voting age, women, and on race, I believe.
Yeah, so we just need to revise that one that's made it 18. Just send it back up to 30.
We're not going to get that constitutional amendment anytime soon.
Man, I was so excited.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.